U.S. slams door shut. China's tilapia industry collapsing with nowhere left to sell. Broken promises. How the CCP's trade war gambit backfired and sparked a quiet people's revolt. Many will die this year. China's hidden crisis behind trade war and viral outbreaks. Welcome aboard today's program. Everything you need to know is in Decoding China. U.S. slams door shut. China's tilapia industry collapsing with nowhere left to sell. U.S. imposing a 170% punitive tariff on Chinese tilapia exports worth about $425 million, effectively shutting the door on one of the largest markets for this popular seafood. This punitive measure, part of an escalating trade war, has sent shockwaves through China's tilapia industry, particularly in Maoming, the country's tilapia capital. The tariffs, which add $170 to every $100 of tilapia entering the U.S., have rendered Chinese tilapia uncompetitive, driving prices down and threatening the livelihoods of thousands. Maoming, a subtropical city in southern China, produces 1/9 of the nation's tilapia and exports 100,000 tons annually, primarily to the U.S. and Canada. This output sustains the annual fish consumption of roughly 25 million Americans, with tilapia ranking as the fourth most popular seafood in the U.S. The city's warm climate and abundant water resources support a robust industry chain, from hatcheries and feed production to large-scale farming and processing. 16 factories in Maoming churn out fillets for American supermarkets, supporting tens of thousands of families and driving rural revitalization. However, the new tariffs have crippled this industry. Prices have plummeted, with tilapia in sheds now fetching just 70 cents per pound, down from 80 cents last year, and open pond fish selling for as low as 60 cents. Factories are buying at 58 cents, barely covering costs. Farmers face the grim prospect of losses if they continue production. Hatcheries report no new orders for fry, feed manufacturers are seeing reduced demand, and processing plants sit idle. Tongwei Group, a major aquaculture company, warns that 1 in 10 tilapia farmers nationwide could lose their jobs this month. The trade war, marked by the U.S. raising tariffs on Chinese goods by 145% and China retaliating with 125% tariffs on U.S. products, has disrupted normal trade. In Maoming, the impact is palpable. March to May, typically the peak season for tilapia stocking, has seen scarce orders, with sales dropping by more than half. Workers describe this as the toughest year yet, with fear and uncertainty gripping the industry. The ripple effects extend beyond farmers to processors, logistics workers, and entire communities dependent on tilapia. As American consumers enjoy tilapia, many unaware of its origins, the industry in Maoming teeters on the brink. The high tariffs not only threaten a key food supply chain but also jeopardize the economic stability of a region that has long relied on the U.S. market. Without relief, the once thriving tilapia trade faces a bleak future. The escalating trade war between the U.S. and China has plunged Maoming's tilapia industry into crisis, threatening the economic lifeline of a region known as China's tilapia capital. In early April, a U.S. executive order imposed a 34% reciprocal tariff on Chinese products, compounding existing 20% to 40% tariffs from February. This has driven tilapia prices down by 17%, with only a slight recovery that leaves farmers and the city's 16 export processing companies struggling to survive. Over 60% of Maoming's tilapia was once sold to the U.S., but with import costs soaring, processors warn of impending bankruptcies, endangering tens of thousands of livelihoods. Maoming's crisis reflects broader trade frictions and exposes a critical structural flaw: over-reliance on the U.S. market. The local tilapia industry was meticulously tailored to American preferences, from boneless, skinless fillets to specific sizes, packaging, and certifications like BAP and ASC. This model fueled rapid growth but left the industry vulnerable when tariffs disrupted exports. The 170% tariff on tilapia, part of a broader U.S. policy targeting Chinese agricultural products like shrimp, crabs, mushrooms, nuts, tea, and herbs, has made Chinese goods uncompetitive, with additional costs pricing them out of U.S. markets. Suggestions to pivot to China's domestic market face significant hurdles. Urban households, with 70% of their assets tied to real estate, lack the disposable income to absorb excess tilapia production. Analyst Wang Yi notes that decades of housing reforms have drained generational wealth, leaving many families in debt and unable to boost consumption. Despite government calls for increased spending, the wealth structure and competitive domestic seafood market limit demand. Tilapia, facing competition from cheaper freshwater fish and differing consumer preferences for whole fish over standardized fillets, struggles to gain traction locally. Maoming's plight underscores the fragility of industries built on single market dependency. As tariffs choke off exports and domestic markets falter, the region's farmers, processors, and workers face an uncertain future, highlighting the profound human cost of global trade disputes. The Chinese tilapia industry, reeling from a 170% U.S. tariff that has virtually closed the American market, faces daunting challenges in finding alternative outlets. Annually, the industry is struggling to pivot to domestic or other international markets like the EU, Africa, or the Middle East. Weak domestic demand, a sluggish economy, and tilapia's limited appeal in China make local sales a tough sell. Redirecting exports requires overhauling production lines, marketing channels, and compliance with diverse regulations, costly and time-intensive changes that may not offset the loss of the U.S. market. The broader context of the U.S.-China trade war exacerbates the crisis. U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods now reach 245%, while China's retaliatory tariffs hit 125%, grinding bilateral trade to a near halt. Commentators argue that the U.S., President Trump, aims not to cripple China's economy but to pressure the CCP. They describe the tariffs as a tool to decouple from the CCP, weaken its grip, and foster internal division, aligning with calls from figures like former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to empower the Chinese people distinct from the CCP. China's economic woes compound the tilapia industry's plight. A long-term deflationary cycle, declining corporate profits, and weak consumer spending stifle domestic demand. The real estate sector is crumbling, local governments are mired in debt, and private businesses are shutting down. Foreign investment is drying up, unemployment is rising, and a declining birth rate adds to the gloom. Economists highlight a deeper issue, a lack of confidence rooted in the CCP's authoritarian system. Stanford's Su Chenggang points out that the political structure, designed to preserve CCP control, undermines economic vitality. Without rule of law or protections for personal wealth, businesses and individuals lack faith in the future. Wang Yi describes China's economy as predatory, enriching the state while exploiting its people. Resources are concentrated in the hands of the CCP, which he calls the nation's largest monopolist. He likens China to a sweatshop, producing vast goods its citizens cannot afford, a stark contrast to economies like the U.S., where wealth is more widely distributed. Meanwhile, CCP media distorts the narrative, framing U.S. tariffs as an attack on China itself, deflecting blame from the party's policies. As the tilapia industry and broader economy falter, the CCP's grip on power remains the central obstacle to meaningful reform. Broken promises, how the CCP's trade war gambit backfired and sparked a quiet people's revolt. In recent years, ordinary Chinese citizens have faced growing economic hardships, despite official reports of GDP growth. Many feel the pinch of a sluggish economy, with businesses struggling, the real estate market stagnating, and youth unemployment soaring. People are tightening their belts, spending cautiously as financial pressures mount. The escalation of the Sino-US trade war in April 2025 has deepened these woes, particularly for those in export-driven regions like Shanghai, Guangdong, and Zhejiang, where foreign trade business owners express pessimism and frustration. Amid these challenges, official narratives have shifted from defiant rhetoric to claims of triumph in the great power rivalry. However, economic analysts and consulting firms warn that China's export-oriented economy may face greater strain than the United States. In the coming years, experts predict a wave of bankruptcies among small and medium-sized enterprises, widespread layoffs, salary cuts, and rising living costs. Consumer confidence is waning, leaving ordinary citizens trapped between escalating prices and shrinking incomes, grappling with an increasingly difficult reality. This situation calls for clear-headed analysis over reliance on official propaganda. The ongoing trade war underscores critical questions. What are the root causes of these economic struggles? Are government policies truly serving the people, or are they focused on preserving political power? Only by seeking the truth and thinking critically about the future can individuals navigate these turbulent times and avoid being swayed by superficial narratives. From trade wars to the polarization of the rich and the poor, the truth behind economic prosperity. The escalating trade war between the United States and China has exposed deep-seated economic vulnerabilities in China, revealing a complex interplay of systemic issues, wealth inequality, and public disillusionment. Historically, after the Soviet Union's collapse in 1991, the U.S. granted China permanent normal trade relations in 2000, paving the way for China's entry into the World Trade Organization in 2001. China's economic Western trade relations and access to global markets. This opened international markets, attracting foreign capital and technology, and transforming China into the world's factory. The hard work of Chinese laborers, coupled with these favorable conditions, drove significant income growth and employment opportunities. However, the ruling CCP has often claimed credit for this prosperity, despite exploiting cheap labor and causing environmental degradation to amass wealth. While China became the world's second largest economy by 2010, the benefits have been evenly distributed. A 2023 World Bank report highlighted citizens. The 2024 World Inequality Database further revealed that the 10% controls 68% of the nation's wealth, underscoring a stark divide between the elite and ordinary citizens. Systemic corruption, coupled with inflated housing, education, and healthcare costs, has drained savings, leaving many unable to secure their financial future. Even small savings are at risk due to unreliable banking and financial schemes, such as P2P lending and Izubeo, which have collapsed amid inadequate regulation and elite power struggles. The Chinese government's promises of common prosperity, reiterated at the 2012 CCP's Congress, have rung hollow for many. Policies aimed at boosting domestic consumption, like the push for dual circulation a decade ago, often fueled speculative real estate booms that depleted family savings across generations. Economists argue that poverty in China is exacerbated by restricted access to accurate information, a problem compounded by the CCP's control over media and data. The stock market, dominated by powerful insiders, frequently leaves small investors with heavy losses, further eroding trust. China's economic model, lacking moral and ethical foundations, faces mounting challenges. The trade war, with U.S. tariffs signaling a retreat from Chinese goods, threatens to unravel the export-driven growth that once propelled the nation. As public awareness grows, many Chinese citizens are seeing through decades of propaganda, questioning whether government policies serve the people or merely prop up the regime. The economy's future hinges on addressing these systemic flaws, but without transparency and reform, China's path to sustainable prosperity remains uncertain. Causes and essence of the trade war. The U.S.-China trade war, often framed as a battle over tariffs, stems from deeper issues tied to the CCP's failure to adhere to international trade norms. While some, swayed by CCP propaganda, blame the Trump administration's tariffs for economic woes, experts argue the root cause lies in China's unfair trade practices, including intellectual property theft, forced technology transfers, and state-driven subsidies. These policies have disrupted global markets and eroded trust in China's economy. China's Made in China 2025 initiative, launched in 2015, exemplifies these practices. A European Union Chamber of Commerce report, representing over 1,700 companies, criticized the CCP for using subsidies, discriminatory procurement, and forced tech transfers to favor domestic firms. This has stifled foreign investment and heightened global trade tensions. State-backed companies like Huawei have benefited from billions in subsidies, low-interest loans, and discounted land deals, enabling them to dominate markets through predatory pricing rather than innovation. Intellectual property theft is another flashpoint. The U.S. 2018 report documented how China's systematic theft of American technologies costs U.S. firms hundreds of billions annually. Foreign companies, including Microsoft, face rampant piracy and trademark violations in China, with little recourse due to weak enforcement and CCP influence in global bodies like the World Trade Organization. Economist Peter Navarro, a key Trump advisor, detailed these issues in his 2011 book, Death by China. He explained that China's trade approach combines aggressive export tactics with shielding its own markets from foreign competition, using tools like currency manipulation, illegal subsidies, and environmental neglect to undercut competitors. Navarro highlighted the human cost, from toxic Chinese exports like contaminated food and pharmaceuticals to unsafe working conditions that harm Chinese laborers. His work underpinned the Trump administration's tariff strategy, aimed at countering these practices. The U.S. has also imposed tariffs on other nations to strengthen global alliances and renegotiate trade deals, such as the USMCA, to collectively address China's violations. Far from mere protectionism, these tariffs seek to dismantle unfair trade systems and promote a transparent global order. While the CCP deflects blame, the trade war reflects a broader push to hold China accountable for decades of rule-breaking, with the goal of fostering fair competition worldwide. The trade war exposes systemic issues. In Yiwu, China, often called the world's supermarket, a deepening crisis is unfolding as tariffs from the ongoing U.S.-China trade war chokes the city's export-driven economy. Local merchants, once thriving, now face plummeting orders, with one business owner lamenting online, "The lanterns haven't even been lit, and business has already gone cold." Yiwu's struggles mirror broader challenges for China's Made in China model, exposing an economy heavily reliant on low-cost manufacturing and exports, yet vulnerable due to weak domestic demand and limited technological innovation. Despite efforts by Yiwu's local government to provide subsidies, scarce funds have failed to deliver meaningful relief, leaving businesses teetering on the edge. The trade war underscores a fundamental clash between the U.S. and China, innovation versus cost-driven competition. The U.S. thrives on a system that fosters creativity, protects intellectual property, and encourages entrepreneurship, driving limitless value through invention. China, by contrast, has leaned on low-cost production, a strategy with finite returns. This disparity highlights systemic issues in China's economic framework, where a focus on quick profits and shortcuts, including widespread intellectual property theft, has undermined the development of a robust technological foundation. Such practices, often tacitly condoned, erode the potential for cohesive, long-term innovation. Compounding the issue, the CCP has deflected blame for the trade war onto the U.S., stoking nationalist fervor and portraying America as the enemy. This narrative obscures the real problem, a political system that prioritizes control over sustainable growth. The government's push for internal circulation to boost self-reliance has instead led to economic stagnation, with businesses trapped in layoffs and closures. Ordinary citizens bear the brunt, facing losses and uncertain futures. As Yiwu's markets dim, the trade war lays bare the urgent need for China to rethink its economic priorities and address the structural weaknesses of global standing. Awakening and hope. In the face of ongoing hardship, the Chinese people are increasingly recognizing the true nature of the CCP. Professor Ming Jujing from National Taiwan University explains that the CCP exploits human desires for wealth, power, and pleasure through its united front strategy, which it describes as making friends. By offering material rewards, the CCP secures loyalty from both domestic elites and international figures, fueling a global moral crisis. This tactic has even reached the rule of law. Opposition to the CCP is not opposition to the Chinese people but to its authoritarian grip. Upholding kindness and morality is essential to countering this influence. The CCP's belief that man can conquer nature ignores the limits of human control over global events. Since the 9 commentaries on the Communist Party 2004, over 405 million people have publicly withdrawn from the CCP and its affiliations, reclaiming their moral resolve. Despite China's economic struggles and a history of man-made disasters, hope persists. By fully rejecting the CCP, the source of much of this suffering, China can pave the way for a future defined by freedom and prosperity. Many will die this year. China's hidden crisis behind trade war and viral outbreaks. Since the start of 2025, mainland China has been grappling with a wave of sudden deaths and viral outbreaks, including COVID-19, influenza, and other unspecified viruses. Social media platforms like Douyin have amplified public concern, with bloggers warning of a grim year ahead. One prominent blogger, Li Guxiaoshi, predicted in February that 2025 would see widespread deaths globally, driven by wars or viruses, urging people to maintain strict hygiene practices. Comments from netizens across Guizhou, Jilin, and Shaanxi echoed these fears, reporting frequent deaths in their communities, particularly among young people and those in their 30s and 40s, often from sudden causes like heart attacks. Another blogger, founder of Taiyuan by Liji, highlighted a disturbing trend in April, noting an increasing number of deaths among those born in the 1980s and 1990s, many due to myocardial infarction. Netizens from Guangxi, Sichuan, and Hunan shared similar accounts, citing cases of liver cancer, cerebral hemorrhages, and heart attacks claiming lives as young as 22. Some speculated about links to COVID-19 vaccines, though no official data supports this. A viral claim that 5.2% of people born in the 1980s had died by late 2024 was debunked by Chinese authorities, yet public anxiety persists, fueled by first-hand reports of untimely deaths. Adding to the unease, a video on the Clean World platform's The Third Eye program described deserted villages, new graves, and overwhelmed crematoriums, questioning China's official population figures. The program alleged that the CCP is concealing the true scale of an ongoing epidemic. These claims remain unverified, and the CCP continues to deny allegations of a cover-up. However, the combination of reported deaths, social media outcry, and distrust in official narratives has heightened public fear, with many questioning whether China is entering a deadly new phase. We want to hear from you. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on today's topic. If you found this video